Assuming a Tory victory, what do you see as the best case and worst case scenario for EU-UK relations and the respective political and economic trajectories, Professor Matthias?
So assuming a victory, I think the best case scenario is a healthy victory, where Boris Johnson can govern more from the center rather than from the right. It's a bit of wishful thinking. But that would mean, I think, where he manages to actually extend the transition period for, let's say, 2 years, and actually comes up with quite a very close relationship where there's kind of a trade-off between close to security cooperation and maybe a kind of more arm's length sort of trade deal where this kind of, it can be constructed as a win-win. I think the worst case scenario is a very narrow victory for Boris Johnson, in which you end up with maybe a kind of a 20-seat majority where he, just like his predecessor Theresa May, is hijacked by a kind of European Research Group majority or minority that then, makes an extension impossible, and you have the kind of cliff edge scenario back, and they could actually crash out under those terms.
And Professor Hill, what, if anything, do you think is most misunderstood of the British public's voting priorities in this election? And how do you think this will change following tomorrow's results?
It's usually assumed that the priority for the British voting public in an election like this is single issue, that it's Brexit. It's been Brexit, Brexit, Brexit now for 3 years. Nobody's been able to escape from it. And yet at the same time, a lot of commentators say people are sick of Brexit, in which case they would either vote to get rid of it, get it done. That would be a powerful factor in favour of Mr. Johnson. Or they would vote on other factors altogether when the press and the media think that they are in fact voting about Brexit. So it will be very interesting to see the results tonight for a number of reasons, but particularly to see whether there is variation. If there is a very predictable swing right across the country, then I think we can say that Brexit is the main driver of the election result. But if we see variation, not just regional, but actually within individual seats, we will have to conclude either that there are elements of tactical voting, which undoubtedly I think there will be, but also that local conditions may have come into play, because the state of the British economy is quite differentiated. There are severe pockets of poverty and unhappiness in the economy, and there are some extremely prosperous areas. They don't map on absolutely straightforwardly either to the party political map, because London is the economic hub of the country and is doing pretty well, and yet London has become increasingly a Labour area. So if Johnson wins and yet Labour does extremely well in London, that could reflect just Remain, but it could reflect all kinds of other considerations as well. So I would expect to see the experts picking over the debris of this election in all cases, except that of the kind of clear Tory majority which Professor Matthias has been talking about.
And Professor Frosini, how do you think Brexit's ultimate outcome will inform future ambitions for EU enlargement or secession across Europe, given the political and legal challenges?
Actually, I don't see a strict connection between Brexit or no Brexit and EU enlargement and secession movements elsewhere, to be quite honest. I think the impact of Brexit on the EU and how we see EU integration, we already saw in 2016. Certainly, if Brexit were to be stopped, and tonight we have a surprise, and there is a Remain majority that basically wants Britain to remain in the European Union, that could have a positive effect on the European integration process, although I think any likelihood of any EU enlargement in the next few years is not going to happen. There's talks about countries such as Albania or North Macedonia entering the EU at a certain point, but that's not going to happen in the next couple of years, certainly not. As far as secessionist movements within Europe are concerned, I guess we have to focus on what's happening in particular in Catalonia and the relationship between Catalonia and the rest of Spain, and how things pan out in terms of the formation of a new government and whether that problem can be solved. That remains certainly on the table at the moment. And then, of course, within the United Kingdom, we have to see what happens, in particular with the idea of the Scottish National Party asking for a second referendum.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Right.